Teacher shaves the head of a black girl, but what happens next shocks everyone. What happens when a teacher's prejudice turns the life of a 12-year-old girl into a true battlefield? This is the story of Maya, a young girl who, after facing public humiliation, discovers a strength she didn't know she had. In a small rural town in the United States, an act of authoritarianism by Sarah, a strict teacher, triggers a series of events that will reveal the racial tensions and deep divisions within the community. Maya Johnson has always been an introspective girl, but full of dreams. With her curly hair, she felt connected to her identity and the rich culture that surrounded her. However, school, which should have been a space for learning and acceptance, became a hostile place. Teacher Sarah, with her rigid and moralistic view, saw no value in embracing diversity. For her, discipline came first, even if it meant dehumanizing a student. When Sarah decides to shave Maya's head, claiming hygiene issues, Maya's world collapses. This act is not just humiliation. It is an open wound that exposes the racism that permeates society. Maya's life, which was once marked by curiosity and the love of her mother, Angela, is now invaded by doubts and insecurities. Angela always taught Maya to value her heritage, but now she faces a challenge that could define her daughter's future. What to do when the place that should protect the child becomes a battlefield against discrimination? Angela's pain is palpable when she discovers what happened, and her indignation drives her to seek justice. This fight is not only for Maya's dignity, but also for all the silenced voices in the community. Meanwhile, Ethan Parker, a young idealistic lawyer, enters the scene. He sees the opportunity to make a difference in a system that often ignores the most vulnerable. However, the pressure from his own community challenges him to reconsider his choices. Angela and Maya's struggle inspires him to defy expectations and take a stand against what he considers unjust. Tensions rise as the case becomes public, and the town that seemed peaceful begins to shake under the weight of truths that could no longer be ignored. With every step taken by Maya and her mother, the story transforms into a journey of resilience. They not only seek justice, but also inspire the community to unite against prejudice. As protests gain momentum in the town square, previously silenced voices rise up, demanding respect and dignity. Change is on the horizon, but the path is filled with challenges. This narrative explores not only Maya and Angela's struggle, but also the impact their actions have on Sarah and Ethan. Each character is forced to confront their own prejudices and reevaluate what it truly means to be part of a community. What began as an act of oppression transforms into a catalyst for change, leading everyone involved to reflect on their own stories, their failures, and the possibility of a new beginning. Thus, the plot reveals that true strength lies not only in resisting, but in coming together. What happens when an act of cruelty transforms into a movement of hope? It is this question that permeates the lives of each character, leading them to a space of reflection and transformation, challenging them to find new meaning in their lives and identities. The sun began to set in the small town of Maplewood, casting a golden light over the quiet streets. However, inside the school, a heavy atmosphere hung in the air. Maya Johnson, with her new bald look, felt like a stranger in her own skin. The echo of her classmates' laughter and cruel comments still resonated in her mind as she tried to focus on the words of teacher Sarah. The humiliation she suffered was not just physical. It was a deep emotional wound that made her question her identity. Maya had always been a shy girl, but her curiosity led her to explore the world around her. Now, however, she felt her voice had been silenced. The images of her mother, Angela, encouraging her to value her unique beauty and the strength of her cultural heritage, felt distant. What had once been a comfort had now become a burden, a painful reminder of what had been taken from her. With each passing day, Maya wondered if she would find the strength to stand up again. Angela, for her part, was consumed by indignation. She silently accompanied her daughter in the days following the incident, her heart breaking as she saw the pain in Maya's eyes. She knew she needed to act, but wasn't sure how. School was supposed to be a safe place, and the idea that her daughter had been treated so cruelly left her furious. The community, which had always seemed united, now revealed deep fissures. Angela decided she could not remain still. The fight for Maya's dignity required courage, and she was willing to face it. Ethan Parker, a young lawyer in town, observed the turmoil unfolding. Although he was relatively new to Maplewood, he already knew the reputation of teacher Sarah. What had happened to Maya deeply disturbed him. He remembered his own childhood, when he witnessed similar injustices but never had the courage to stand up. Now, a flame of determination was beginning to burn within him. He wanted to use his skills to help Maya and her mother. However, the pressure from his family and the conservative community made him hesitate. The fear of putting himself in a vulnerable position made him question whether he was ready for this fight. The following weeks brought new challenges for Maya. Every day she faced hostility from some classmates who saw her altered appearance as an opportunity to mock her. The cruel words hit her like daggers, and she began to withdraw even more. School, which should have been a place of learning, became an emotional battleground. Maya often locked herself in her room, trying to escape the teasing and the pain she felt. Angela, noticing the change in her daughter, decided it was time to take action. She began to meet with other parents and community members who were equally concerned. During these meetings, Angela met Ava, a single mother who had also faced discrimination with her daughter, who had learning difficulties. A friendship began to form between them, and together they discussed ways to address the situation at school. Ava became a valuable ally, sharing her own experiences and offering emotional support to Angela and Maya. Meanwhile, the tension in Maplewood was rising. Voices in support of Maya began to echo, but opposing reactions also emerged. Sarah, in her rigidity, was unwilling to back down. She saw Angela's resistance and the protests as a challenge to her authority. For her, discipline came before everything, and the idea of yielding to community pressure made her even more determined to maintain her control. Maya, amidst all this, struggled to find her voice. She knew she needed to face her fears, but the thought of exposing herself again was terrifying. However, her mother's presence and the growing friendship with Ava pushed her forward. A small spark of courage began to ignite within her, but the first steps were still difficult. The fear of the unknown paralyzed her, and doubt made her question whether she was really strong enough to fight. What started as an act of cruelty was turning into a struggle for dignity, but the path to overcoming it was fraught with obstacles. Each challenge made Maya reflect on who she was and what it meant to be seen and heard. The journey was just beginning, and the young girl found herself on the brink of a transformation that could not only change her life, but also impact the entire Maplewood community. With each passing day, Maya felt the weight of loneliness accumulating on her shoulders. At school, she tried to hide in a corner of the classroom, away from the curious glances and cutting laughter that followed her like shadows. The words her mother had told her so many times about the strength she possessed seemed to echo in an empty space. She wanted to be strong, but each hurtful comment made her feel smaller. The reflection she saw in the mirror looked like a stranger, and her insecurity grew with each day. Meanwhile, Angela became a tireless force in seeking justice for her daughter. With Ava's help, she organized a meeting with other concerned parents. The group grew, and voices in support of Maya began to rise. However, Sarah's resistance was fierce. The teacher not only ignored the parents' concerns, but also attacked anyone who dared to question her authority. For her, what had happened to Maya was a matter of discipline, and she was determined to maintain order, even if it meant disregarding the emotional pain her student was facing. The tension at school increased, and Maya felt its effects on her body. She began to have trouble sleeping, with thoughts consuming her at night. The nights were long and lonely, and the lack of sleep left her more tired and unmotivated. She tried to focus in class, but her mind often wandered, thinking of the cruel comments and the pain that accompanied her. The desire to hide grew stronger, and the thought of returning to school terrified her. One day, after a particularly painful episode when a group of classmates surrounded her and began making jokes about her appearance, Maya decided she could no longer endure it. She left school in tears, feeling as though the world was crumbling around her. When she got home, she collapsed into her mother's arms. Angela, seeing her daughter's pain, decided it was time to take bolder action. She wanted the school to recognize the severity of the situation and for Maya's voice to be heard. Before we continue with this emotional story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know in the comments which city you are watching this video from. Angela and Ava began planning a peaceful protest in front of the school. They wanted to draw the community's attention to what was happening. The event attracted the attention of many, but also generated resistance. Some parents supported the idea, while others believed that discipline should be maintained above all else. Maya, hearing her mother's plans, felt a mix of fear and hope. She knew that the fight for her dignity was becoming broader than she had ever imagined, but she still hesitated to expose herself again. Meanwhile, Ethan watched everything from a distance. He was torn. The idea of getting involved attracted him, but the fear of community judgment paralyzed him. He remembered his childhood and how helpless he felt in the face of injustices. When he decided he couldn't stand by, he went to Angela and Ava, offering legal help. Ethan's presence brought new energy to Angela's fight, and Maya began to see a light at the end of the tunnel. However, the path would not be easy. On the day of the protest, Maya found herself surrounded by people who supported her, but anxiety took over her. The fear of facing Sarah and the classmates who had hurt her was paralyzing. She noticed her mother and Ava were there, but the supportive voices couldn't drown out the echo of the cruel laughter that still haunted her. Amidst the protest, a group of students opposed to the demonstration began to gather, challenging those who were fighting for Maya. The tense atmosphere made the young girl's heart race, and doubts about her strength began to root themselves once again. As the protest unfolded, Maya felt a wave of emotions. She wanted to be brave, but insecurity consumed her. What she was experiencing felt like a roller coaster of feelings, with moments of hope followed by waves of despair. And when she saw a classmate who had been especially cruel approaching, terror took hold of her. The situation demanded a choice: remain silent and hide, or find the courage to stand up and speak. Angela, noticing her daughter's internal struggle, came closer and whispered words of encouragement. She reminded Maya of the strength that had always been within her, a strength that was unique and powerful. Her mother's support, along with the presence of Ethan and Ava, began to ignite a small flame of courage in Maya. She knew that the fight was not just for herself, but for everyone who felt alone and helpless. The emotional tension reached its peak when Maya decided it was time to take a stand. She took a deep breath and with a choked voice began to share her story. With every word, she felt lighter, as if she were freeing herself from a weight that had kept her bound. The silence that followed was palpable, and Maya's words reverberated throughout the square. She was ready to face her fears, and even with the uncertainties, she knew she was not alone. Thus, the fight for her dignity became not only a personal journey, but a movement that could transform Maplewood. Maya was at the center of the protest, surrounded by familiar and unfamiliar faces, each carrying a message of support. Nervousness overwhelmed her, and a whirlwind of emotions engulfed her. When she decided to speak, fear seemed to paralyze her legs, but her mother's voice, soft and encouraging, propelled her to take action. With her heart racing, she began to share her story. "I am Maya," she said, her voice trembling, "and I am just a girl who only wanted to be accepted." The words came out with difficulty, But as she spoke, something began to change within her. Each sentence made her feel stronger. She spoke about the jokes, the isolation, and how all of it made her feel invisible. The silence of those listening wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and for a moment, Maya forgot about her fear. But in the middle of her speech, a shout pierced the air. It was one of the students opposing the protest, a boy who had always tormented her. "You are nothing, just a loser!" His words ricocheted in her mind, and the confidence she had gained began to fade away. Whispers and laughter emerged again, like a wave of pain enveloping her. What was about to be a moment of transformation was turning into a nightmare. Maya hesitated, and the voice that had once been strong now faltered. She felt small again, as if she were back in the classroom, alone in a corner. A sense of failure washed over her. She wanted to be strong, but his words made her reconsider everything. What was happening to her was more than just a verbal attack. It was a cruel reminder of her insecurities. However, Angela, by her side, sensed her daughter's weakness and stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maya, you are stronger than you think," Angela said, her voice firm. "Remember what you are fighting for. It's not just for you, but for everyone who feels like you." Her mother's words penetrated Maya's mind, like a beacon in the darkness. She looked around and saw the people supporting her. They were not just there to listen to her, they were there to fight alongside her. With renewed breath, Maya took a deep breath and decided she could not let that voice bring her down. She looked the boy in the eyes and said, "You can try to bring me down, but you won't silence me. I choose to be heard." Every word that came out of her mouth was like a cry for freedom, and the courage she felt enveloped her. The audience's reaction was immediate. Some began to applaud, while others stood in silence, surprised by Maya's change in attitude. She realized there was something powerful in her vulnerability, something that made her even stronger. The fear did not completely disappear, but now there was a growing determination within her. However, the opposing group did not remain quiet. They began to move toward Maya and her mother, ready to confront them. The atmosphere changed quickly, and the tension in the air was palpable. Adrenaline pulsed through Maya's veins, and for a moment she felt on the verge of collapse. But Ava and Ethan's presence by her side encouraged her to stand firm. "Stay calm! This is a peaceful protest!" Ethan shouted, trying to contain the situation. But the challenge had been thrown down. The opposing group began to make noise, shouting and laughing, trying to destabilize the demonstration. Maya looked at the crowd and saw not just friends, but also strangers who were there for a greater cause. This was the opportunity to turn her pain into something positive, and it became more than just a personal fight. It was a fight for all those who felt alone and helpless. The emotional tension reached a critical point, and Maya had to decide. She could retreat and let fear dominate her or face this new wave of adversity. She remembered what her mother always said about strength and resilience. Now more than ever, Maya realized her fight was not just about her, but about a fairer future for everyone. So, with a cry of determination, she lifted her head and shouted, "We will not be silenced!" Maya's words echoed in the square, and the crowd responded with applause and shouts of support. The support that once seemed distant was now right there, pulsating around her. The challenge had changed her perspective. And despite the fear, Maya was ready to fight for her dignity and the dignity of all who felt like her. The battle was far from over, but in that moment, she had chosen to be more than a victim. She had become a voice, a hope, and that made her feel alive. The atmosphere in the square changed rapidly after Maya's declaration. The echo of her words still vibrated in the air, but the tension remained. As the crowd applauded, a group of students opposed to the protest approached with defiant expressions. Maya felt her heart race again, but this time there was a spark of determination lit within her. Angela, by her side, held her daughter's hand tightly, as if passing all her courage. Maya knew that the fight was just beginning. The support she felt in those brief moments of bravery was becoming a source of strength, but it also brought a new weight. Now it was no longer just about being accepted. It was about standing up and fighting for a dignified space, something that could bring real and lasting consequences. "Let's go, Maya." "We are with you!" shouted Ethan, and the crowd echoed in unison. The applause and shouts became a shield against the approaching hostility. But even so, the tension was palpable, and Maya realized that her courage could also attract more animosity. The opposing group, led by that guy who had always tormented her, got even closer, throwing provocations. "Look, the loser found a voice, but that's not going to change anything." They laughed, but Maya refused to let those words make her back down. Instead, she took a deep breath and remembered the purpose of the protest. It wasn't just for her, but for everyone who felt marginalized. After the shouts and provocations, someone from the opposing group threw an object at Maya. She flinched momentarily, but seeing her friends positioning themselves in front of her gave her a new push. The protection she felt made her realize she was surrounded by people who believed in her, and that, in some way, made her stronger. The next moments were confusing. The police arrived quickly, trying to contain the situation before it turned violent. Maya, still in shock, saw how the dynamics had changed. That moment of courage also brought new challenges. She was exposed, and now she had to deal with the consequences of her choice. On her way home, the feeling of triumph she had felt in the square began to dissipate. Maya sat in her room, her eyes lost in the window. What had once seemed like a victory now left her with a mix of emotions. The fear of retaliation, of new attacks, haunted her. She felt that her life had changed, but she didn't know how to deal with it. What would happen at school the next day? And what if those students decided to retaliate? Angela entered the room, noticing her daughter's worried expression. "Maya, you were amazing today. I'm so proud of you," she said, sitting next to her daughter. But Maya couldn't share the joy. "And now, Mom, what will happen tomorrow? What if they attack me again?" Angela looked at her tenderly. "You did something very courageous. No matter what happens, you are not alone. We have to face this together." Her mother's words were a balm, but Maya's insecurity still consumed her. She knew her life would never be the same. The struggle for acceptance had now turned into a direct confrontation against prejudice. In the following days, school became a psychological battleground. The provocations did not stop, and the group that had once tormented her seemed determined to make her an example of what would happen to anyone who opposed them. Maya tried to stay strong, but the pressure was intense. Every step she took down the hallway felt like a challenge. She felt eyes on her and whispers, as if everyone were judging her. With each new day, Maya remembered the support she had received at the protest. Angela's words echoed in her mind, and she began to gather with other students who felt the same way. Together they formed a small group that met after school, discussing ways to strengthen and support each other. It was a way to create a safe space, a refuge where they could share their experiences and find courage in one another. During one of those meetings, Ava, one of her new friends, said, "I think change starts with small steps. We need to come together and show that we are stronger together." Ava's words resonated with Maya, and for the first time since the protest, she felt a wave of hope. It was true. Although the challenges were great, unity could be a powerful force. Maya realized that even amid fear and insecurity, there was a path ahead. The battle she was facing was not just hers, but for all who felt marginalized. And although the new obstacles were daunting, she had something she hadn't had before. A support network, a group of friends willing to fight by her side. With that, she began to understand that her voice was more than a cry of resistance. It was a call to action, and together, they could make a difference. Maya was at a turning point in her life. The days after the protest were filled with challenges, but also brought a new perspective. As she faced the provocations and disdain of her peers, she began to realize that her struggle was not just for herself, but represented something larger. The pressure she felt in the school hallways transformed into an impetus to grow stronger. With every hostile glance she received, Maya took a deep breath and tried to remember the support she had found in her friends. Ethan, Ava, and the others were always ready to offer words of encouragement. Together, they discussed strategies for dealing with prejudice, creating a safe environment where they could be authentic. This support network became a fundamental pillar in Maya's life, and she began to trust herself more. One afternoon, while they were meeting, Ava suggested that they organize an event at school to promote diversity and acceptance. The idea seemed bold, but the flame of determination that Maya had found encouraged her to embrace the challenge. "We need to show everyone that we are a united community," she said, her voice firm. The group agreed, and from that moment, a new project began to take shape. Preparing for the event was not easy. Maya faced fear and insecurity as she tried to convince other students to participate. Some people were still hostile, and the memory of the teasing haunted her. But instead of letting it bring her down, she remembered the lessons she had learned. Each attempt to express herself, each conversation she had, brought her closer to the confidence she sought. She began to understand that success was not just about defeating opponents, but also conquering herself. Despite the difficulties, the day of the event arrived. Maya was anxious, but also filled with anticipation. When she entered the auditorium, she saw familiar faces among the crowd. There were students who had previously not cared, but now they were there, supporting the cause. With her heart racing, she stepped onto the stage and looked at the audience. "We are here to celebrate our differences and unite as a community," she began. Her voice trembled, but there was a strength emanating from her. By sharing her experiences, Maya was not only telling her story, but also reflecting on the journeys of many. She spoke about fears, insecurities, but also about the strength she had found by joining with others. The auditorium began to applaud, and the energy in the room shifted. Positivity and acceptance began to replace hostility. By the end of the event, Maya felt light. She had overcome one of her greatest challenges, the insecurity that had kept her bound to fear. She realized that true wealth lay in the connection she had established with others. The friendship she had cultivated with Ethan, Ava, and the rest of the group had become an invaluable treasure. They were not just allies, but a chosen family, willing to fight together. In the following days, the dynamics at school began to change. The event had opened dialogues that were previously unthinkable. The teasing decreased, and many students began to join the cause. Maya realized that by sharing her struggles, she was helping others feel seen and heard. Each shared story was a seed of change. Maya also began to reflect on her experiences. She understood that the prejudice she faced was a reflection of the insecurities of those who perpetuated it. This new perspective helped her develop empathy, not only for those who supported her, but also for those who attacked her. By looking beyond hate, she saw that transformation began within each person. This wisdom helped her grow, and she felt stronger than ever. Over time, Maya became a natural leader among her peers. She began organizing more meetings and discussions about diversity and inclusion. Each small victory encouraged her to continue, and with every new step, she felt more confident. The struggle that had started as a personal battle became a collective movement. Maya finally understood that life is a constant learning experience. The adversities she faced were not barriers, but opportunities for growth. She had found her voice and used it not only to defend herself, but to inspire others. In her journey of overcoming, Maya transformed not only into an advocate for acceptance, but also into an unwavering friend, someone who knew that together they could face any challenge that life presented to them. The day of the diversity and acceptance event had arrived, and the school was electrically charged with anticipation. Maya, standing backstage, felt her heart race. It was the moment she had imagined so many times, but now that it was so close, anxiety nearly paralyzed her. Beside her, Ethan and Ava encouraged her with smiles and words of support. They were her safe harbor, yet the weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders. When she was called to the stage, a flutter of nerves enveloped her. Looking at the audience, she saw familiar and unfamiliar faces, some with expressions of indifference, others with a glimmer of curiosity. But there was something more, an echo of hope. With one last look at her friends, Maya took a deep breath and began. During the first moments, her voice trembled, but as she spoke, her insecurity began to dissipate. She told her story, not only the difficulties she faced, but also the lessons she learned. What felt like a burden transformed into fuel. With each word, the audience seemed to connect more with her message, but in the middle of her speech, a group of students began to murmur. Maya recognized some of them as the ones who had teased her before. One of them, Lucas, stood up and interrupted. "Do you really think this will change anything? People don't care about diversity, they only care about themselves." The room fell silent, and Maya felt a knot form in her throat. That was the same hostility that had haunted her in the school hallways, but instead of letting it bring her down, something inside her ignited. Remembering all the conversations she had had with her friends, she decided she could not let fear dominate her again. "Lucas," she began, her voice stronger than she felt, "change starts with conversation. If we don't talk about it, how are we going to create a better environment for everyone?" The room was tense, but there was a new spark in her eyes. Maya felt the support of her friends surrounding her like an invisible armor. "We all have our battles. What we want is a space where everyone can be who they are without fear of being judged." She looked at the audience, searching for faces that could identify with her message. "Nobody needs to go through this alone. We're in this together." Maya's words began to resonate. Some people in the audience started nodding in agreement. She saw a group of classmates who had previously ignored her now paying attention. But Lucas didn't give up. "Do you really think this will change things? People are who they are, and nothing will change that." Maya felt anger rising, but instead of responding with hostility, she decided to use that moment as an opportunity to educate. "Lucas, I don't expect everyone to change overnight. But if we start to understand each other and listen to one another, we can make small changes. And small changes can lead to big transformations." The silence in the room turned into murmurs of discussion. Maya saw that her message was starting to gain traction. She continued, "Change doesn't happen on its own. It needs all of us to work together. If we look at our differences as something that divides us, we will never be able to unite. But if we accept and celebrate them, we can make our school a place where everyone feels safe and welcomed." The tension began to dissipate. The faces that had once seemed hostile now showed curiosity. Maya realized she had touched something within them, perhaps a seed of reflection. With a smile, she concluded, "True strength comes from unity. Together, we can create a space where everyone can be authentic, and that is a victory for all of us." When she stepped off the stage, a thunderous applause welcomed her. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. It was a sign that she was not alone. Ethan and Ava hugged her, and she realized that the friendship she had cultivated was stronger than any teasing. From that day on, the school began to transform. Conversations about diversity and acceptance spread, and the hostility that once permeated the hallways began to dissipate. Students started to come together, and Maya became a leader, not by being the strongest, but by finding her voice, and more importantly, learning to listen. Amid all this, Maya realized that her true success was not just in changing others' mindsets, but in transforming herself into the person she had always wanted to be. She had overcome her fears, found strength in her vulnerability, and above all, discovered that true wealth lay in the connections she had made. Life had taught her that change begins within each individual, and Maya was now ready to face any challenge that came her way with courage and love. After the event, Maya felt a mix of relief and euphoria. Cheered and surrounded by friends, she knew something had changed within her and around her. As she walked through the school hallways the next day, she noticed a different atmosphere. Students who had previously ignored her now greeted her with smiles. The atmosphere felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. During lunch, Maya sat with Ethan and Ava. "Did you see how they reacted?" Ethan said, his eyes shining with excitement. "It was amazing. I never thought this could happen so quickly." Ava nodded in agreement. "Maya, you really made a difference. People started talking, opening up. It's a start." Maya smiled, but a twinge of worry still nagged at her. What about Lucas? He still seems so resistant. Did he really hear what I said? Ethan sighed. It may take time for him to understand, but you did your part. Now it's his turn to reflect. The following weeks were marked by visible changes. The school began to promote activities and discussions about diversity and acceptance. Teachers, inspired by Maya's courage, organized lectures and workshops. Students started to form support groups, discussing their experiences and learning to support one another. Maya felt proud to see that with her speech she had planted a seed of empathy. However, not everything was easy. Maya still faced disdainful looks from some students. One day while walking to class, she overheard a whispered conversation. "That girl thinks she can change everything by herself." A knot formed in her throat, but instead of letting it bring her down, Maya decided to use it as fuel. "I'm not alone," she thought. "I have friends and allies. Together, we are stronger." One afternoon, while organizing a discussion group on acceptance, Maya decided to approach Lucas. He was sitting in a corner, observing from afar. With her heart racing, she approached him. "Hi, Lucas. I wanted to talk to you." He looked at her with suspicion. "About what?" Maya took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "About what happened at the event. I really want to understand your point of view." Lucas hesitated, but then said, "You only talk about how everyone should be accepted. But what if some people don't want to change? What if this is just the way they are?" Maya reflected, realizing he was grappling with his own insecurities. "I understand what you're saying. No one needs to change who they are, but we can all learn to respect each other. Change doesn't mean you have to become someone else. It's about creating a space where everyone can feel comfortable and safe." Upon hearing this, Lucas seemed thoughtful. Maybe I haven't looked at it from this angle before." Maya smiled, sensing there was a small breakthrough. "If you want, you can join us in the next discussion. I believe your perspective could enrich the conversation." Lucas looked down. "I'll think about it." Over time, Maya realized that her interactions with others became deeper. She started to listen to the stories of her peers, and each one helped her understand that everyone was facing their own battles. This helped her connect even more with those around her. The bullying she had suffered taught her about empathy, and now she was determined to use that experience to help others. A month after the event, the school organized a big celebration of diversity. Maya and her friends were excited, ready to share their stories and hear those of others. Looking at the audience, she saw smiling faces and expressions of support. Lucas was there, and to her surprise, he volunteered to speak. When it was his turn, Lucas began to talk about his own insecurities and fears. He admitted that he often felt pressured to fit into a mold, and that his resistance to change stemmed from the fear of being vulnerable. The audience listened attentively, and Maya felt a wave of gratitude. Change was happening, not just in the school, but within each of them. As everyone came together to celebrate, Maya realized that her journey was just beginning. She had learned that even when things seemed difficult, there was always room for dialogue and understanding. With the support of her friends and the courage she had found, she was ready to continue fighting for a future where everyone could be accepted and valued. Life was a path of constant learning, and Maya was determined to walk that path with love and compassion. Maya observed the transformation around her with a mix of joy and astonishment. What started as a simple talk had become a movement. Students who once avoided each other were now sharing laughter, stories, and experiences. The celebration of diversity was a milestone. Lucas, one of the first to resist change, was now openly talking about his insecurities and fears, inspiring others to do the same. Maya realized that true strength lay in vulnerability, and that was the key to acceptance. However, not everyone was receptive. Some students still murmured hurtful comments, but Maya learned to ignore them. She knew that changes do not happen overnight, and that the path to full acceptance would be long. But every small step counted. Support groups became more frequent, and over time, the school transformed into a place where people felt comfortable being who they truly were. Maya reflected on her journey. That shy girl who once feared rejection had now become a leader. She understood that true strength was not in changing others, but in inspiring them to open up and connect. Looking at her friends, Ethan and Ava, she felt a warmth in her heart. The friendship they cultivated became the foundation of everything. They were a team, and together they were stronger. But Maya's transformation was not just external. Inside her, something had changed deeply. She learned to value her own voice and the importance of being authentic. The fear that had paralyzed her for months now seemed distant. Every time she spoke about the experiences she had lived, she felt freer. She realized that personal overcoming was not just about facing challenges, but about learning to love and accept oneself. At the end of the celebration, a feeling of gratitude washed over her. Maya remembered all the difficulties she had faced and how each one had shaped her. Life was not perfect, but it was full of opportunities for growth and learning. And more importantly, she had learned that true victory lay in creating genuine and respectful connections. Maya looked at the audience, saw the diversity of faces, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had contributed to an environment where everyone could be heard. Her story and Lucas's were just the beginning. Change was underway, and she was excited to be a part of that process. With a smile on her face, Maya decided she would not be silent. She began to plan more events, more discussions, more moments of connection, because she knew that each new conversation could be the key to opening someone's mind and, who knows, changing someone else's life. Maya's story is a powerful reminder that each of us has the potential to make a difference. Her journey of transformation not only impacted the school, but also inspired everyone around her to reflect on their own actions and choices. Change is possible, and it starts with a single step. Now it's your turn. Think about your own experiences and how you can be an agent of change in your life and in the lives of others. Every action counts. Share your stories in the comments and inspire more people to join this journey. Together, we can create a more welcoming and just world. Don't wait any longer. Start now. Liking and subscribing to the channel helps bring more inspiring stories like this one. Let's make a difference together.